guys, welcome back to Our Hot Podcast. I'm here with a very special guest of mine. It is my mentor, one of my great friends, somebody that I look up to and adore very much, Miss Tatyana.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. An honor to be here. Thank you for asking me on.
The honor is mine. I'm so excited. Can you give me a little backstory into who you are and how we met?
So I am a mom, wife, businesswoman, mortgage loan originator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Many et ceteras.
Many et ceteras. And we met because I wanted to take my mortgage loan origination business to the next level. And I was introduced to you in those conversations and hired you to do some marketing for me and really elevated my game. And we just became friends afterwards.
That is 1,000% true. I have to give a prologue, though, because you work at Central Bank. Had previously worked at Central Bank. I worked at Central Bank.
Oh, yes.
And I knew who you were. You did not know who I was. I worked in the loan origination department on the commercial side. So doing documentation, processing, looking at credit apps and all these super fun, exciting things. And you, as a mortgage lender, would take turns coming to different branches to kind of talk to us about mortgages, how to spot referrals and different things, and just educate the tellers and different members of the branch. And every time you came around, every person in the branch would be like, Tatyana's coming. Because clearly she's so stunning, and you're so kind, and you usually bring treats or something, but I was always so enthralled by how poised you were and how professional, and it was at the expense of, obviously, beauty and femininity, and just the way you carried yourself was so professional. I just remember being so in awe and wanting to know you so badly, but I was like, I don't have anything to offer. I don't know. All I can do is credit analysis, and now we became friends, and I'm still so excited and happy about that.
Well, first of all, thank you for the amazing confidence boost. That is so kind of you to say. And it's funny that you say that. I didn't know I had anything to offer you, because one of the things I was thinking about in preparing for this podcast is how many times we limit ourselves because we think we're not qualified.
Yeah.
We think we're not there yet, or that's been my journey that we'll get into here in just a minute, but waiting for permission or waiting for somebody to be like, no. When you're in your purpose and you follow your dreams, which clearly you have, because we're here on your podcast, God does amazing things.
Well, I should have prefaced, Tatyana is one of the most amazing speakers I have ever met, and every conversation we always joke we should have been filming previously because every time we sit down to do a content shoot, we'll end up talking for an hour plus following that, and it gets deep. There will be tears, probably from me. It's just so inspiring every single time. And it's one of those cup-filling relationships that I feel like every time I go into your office, I can chat with you, feeling so drained and just exhausted, maybe imposter syndrome, just whatever it is. And it can be personal, professional, because our relationship has kind of transcended that mentor-mentee box now. Yeah. So I can just come to you with anything, and you've always had such wise counsel for me, and I think it's going to be a great episode because I will benefit from it personally.
Well, I'm excited. I'm very excited.
I am too. I would love to start with your backstory. So you obviously have such an interesting origin story. Tell me the cliff notes of kind of your whole life and then how you came here.
So I immigrated to the United States in the early 90s with my family from Russia, and really kind of just jumped into the culture and grew up very much dual culture. Yeah, grew up Russian at home, and you're trying to be very Americanized at school. And I think partly that's why I don't have much of an accent in my early development years. I just wanted to fit in. Yeah. As an elementary school kid, you just want to be invisible.
Oh my gosh,
want to blend it.
I always joke about how I used to dye my hair, or beg my mom to dye my hair blonde whenever I was younger because I just hated my red hair and it stood out. And then now I pay money to have it.
Yeah. This is so that was my kind of early childhood developmental years, is trying to figure out who am I in this new era. Grew up and really wanted more. I wanted more than my parents had. I wanted more than what I saw kind of our community strive and achieve for, and met my husband really early on and got married really early and had kids really early, and just wanted to see what God had for me. And really that was my whole journey. I felt God had something for me in my life at a very, very young age. And then I just started to seek that out. And we moved to Missouri, 16 years ago.
And if you didn't have a culture shock previously, I'm sure that was...
Yes. Well, yeah, that was definitely a culture shock, but it took us a couple of years to kind of adapt and figure out what we were meant to do here. Yeah. And I worked for a nonprofit, worked for a church for several years, and still had that stirring that there's
Yeah.
there's more. And let me tell you, when you work in ministry and you still have that stirring, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's probably a little disheartening because you think I've come all this way. I'm as close to God as I could be in theory.
Yep.
So where else do I go from here? I'm sure it's a little terrifying to think.
It was definitely terrifying, but I knew that he had called me for something different, so I resigned and stepped down, and I just said, Lord, I'll be obedient. You've put something on my heart, so I'm going to let you lead it. So stepped down. I think I was home for 2 days, and I got a call from a financial institution offering me a job. Wow. They trained me in finance, and that journey allowed us to open up our own business here in Missouri. We've been doing that for the last 7 years, and we went from real estate building to now real estate development to other projects that we're working on.
Which I don't want to gloss over because that's so incredibly impressive and difficult. So you guys build beautiful custom homes, you and your husband.
Yeah.
And I've seen them, they're so stunning. And now you're doing development on a different scale, and that's so many moving parts, so heavily logistic based that the fact that it's just a side thing is astonishing on top of your actual full-time job.
Thank you.
So I just want to make sure we don't gloss over how incredible that is.
It's definitely been a journey because the development aspect of it, I think like 2 years into our business, my husband and I started to really pursue personal development, growth, and communication. Because when you're in business with your spouse, there could be challenges.
Yep. Well, that's one of the main things that we've always talked about is that we have such a similar, I hope, trajectory. I hope to have the kind of marriage you have. I don't want to just, give ourselves kudos, but I see the future that I want in the marriage that you and your husband have. And I would love to emulate that as early as I can, because obviously nothing worth having comes easy.
No.
We've had numerous conversations about the fight that you have to have every day just to have a good marriage, and just having 2 willing participants in the marriage is a good start.
It's a great start.
I'm so thrilled that we have that. But I think that we have a small taste of that because we're co-owners of a business. We both work for ourselves.
Yep.
And even though technically he's an owner in my business, there's no crossover. Even though I'm technically an owner in his business, there's no crossover. So we don't work together, but just that involvement and almost the pressure that you both carry from being under your own volition is a little heavy. So the fact that you guys do that and you have to intermingle all your work tasks and stay on the same page, how does your communication differ from professional couple to home couple?
So one, we make that designation like, hey, I need to talk to my business partner right now. And then it's just boom, boom, boom. You can be straightforward. You don't have to have the fluff. You know that you're talking to your business partner. And it took us years to get there because we didn't know how to differentiate those conversations. And really speaking out our feelings. Hey, I'm overstimulated. I'm overwhelmed.
I had to pull one of those last night.
Yep.
I had to say, I've had a long day. I really just need to stare at my phone for about 30 minutes and then I'll be good.
Exactly.
And it was granted. It was great.
It was granted and it was great because you communicated and he listened. And that is the willing parties to honestly a good marriage. But we have learned, we'll have our 21-year anniversary this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
Happy early
you.
anniversary.
It's wild to think that we've been married 21 years this October, but communication, we feel like we've only learned to communicate like the last 5 years, which is really wild because we've had a pretty wonderful marriage and you think, communication is key. But to the level of communication now, I mean, it's no joke. I was sitting on the couch with my husband, and he's just looking at his phone. And I looked at him. I said, "You're thinking too loud. Calm down." I could tell there's something happening. Like I could just sense it because that is
you feel the atmosphere.
You feel each other's like mindset,
the vibration. Yeah.
And he looked at me. He's like, "How did you know?" But it has taken us years and very intentional study of each other. We did, I think we shared in depth about, we did a personality test, several personality tests, and then swapped each other's results and just read about each other. And that's when I learned that he hears differently than what I am speaking. So understanding that, I can either adjust my communication of what I'm speaking is, this is what I'm saying, and this is what this means. Are you understanding?
Right.
And for him as well, he now knows that, oh, wait, this is a blind spot I had, and now I know about this blind spot, and, vice versa about myself. We learned that he is not, like, to him, he's not wired to be future thinker. Like he's right now, what do I need to do right now?
Right.
Logistically in his business, that serves him so well because problem solve, let's go, move. And I'm like, let's talk about 2 years from now.
Right.
What are your 5-year goals? And he's like,
he said, I think it's the day, maybe the week. I can't tell you all that. But I think both are obviously so essential, both in marriage and in business. But it can be so difficult when you feel like you're speaking different languages to each other, which you've experienced.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
But I think it's very challenging because even us only being almost 3 years into marriage, I feel like our relationship has evolved every year of marriage as well as every year of our dating life. And it's so funny because every year I reflect on the previous one and think, man, we really didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know each other at all. And then
we still think that 21 years in. It's fine.
See?
It's great.
It always evolves, which is good.
You hear a lot of people who go through divorce or who had pretty massive breakups, and the pretty common theme that you hear is, oh, they changed, or I changed, or we grew apart, and that always kind of, in my mind, I was like, okay, well, you want to change. If you get married and you stay the same exact person and you're not evolving, that's not healthy. Like things that don't change and grow die.
Yeah.
So you should be changing. And when we really started to pursue the personal development aspect together, that was my one thing. I said, listen, I'm going to go down this path and I'm going to grow and I'm going to learn and I'm going to study myself. And I want us to do that together because I want us both to grow in the same direction and not grow apart. Like we had that conversation, and I had to drag him to the first master class, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do here?" But he loved it, and he always got something out of every event that we went to. We went to a communications master class, and he loved that. And slowly, he just became like, "This is our thing that we did together." Our date weekends. Personality testing in Arkansas, or you go to Dallas for a communications masterclass, and then you just talk about, well, this is this is what it unlocked in me. This is what now I'm thinking about. And this is what, and it's been awesome. Honestly, it's been awesome. But like literally 10 years into our marriage now, looking back in retrospect, I'm like, we didn't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. You think, oh my gosh, like thank goodness we made it because there were so many things that had to go right. So many things that like luckily we communicated with each other by the grace of God that we were on the same page. And even I don't know if it's the same for you, but there are things looking back that Austin and I worked through communication-wise or opinion-wise. And at the time, I'm like, I should have probably seen that as a bigger hurdle than I did. And it was only because we were both so committed to our relationship and making it work that we were able to overcome it. Because sometimes you're just raised in different ways. You think of different things.
Oh,
and
100%.
You have to have those hard conversations or it does end in, we thought this was overcomable and it turns out it was not.
The biggest thing that I think in marriage is, one, you have come into covenant with one another, but then you also have to trust and be vulnerable to the point of hurt. Like you have to be so vulnerable that this person could hurt you, and I think that is so scary for so many people. So they are not their true, full, transparent selves with their spouse.
Right.
And when you're not truly transparent, I mean, like the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. You come in as you are and say, this is who I am. And then you work through things you need to work through. And then you embrace what you can embrace. That is the best place to be in marriage. Because when you're in covenant with one another, you're serving one another. I look at my marriage as I was created to love my husband, to serve my husband. And I know that like these are not like popular terms, modern terms. Right. But how do I serve him? I serve him by always having a loving heart. I serve him by always being the calm place that he can come to. I serve him by loving him. I serve him by making sure we have a good home. There's that servanthood that I feel I have been tasked with from a higher, power. It has nothing to do with him.
Right.
But when you bring that constantly, and he does the same to me, he is in covenant with me, and he loves me, and he protects me, and he's the provider, and he's the husband, and he's the leader.
Right.
That's serving one another. It just elevates your marriage, that you're not just in it just for the relationship piece.
Absolutely.
It's a covenant that you're in together.
I could not have said it more beautifully. And just the way that you spoke about that, whenever you're both so focused on what can I bring to the marriage versus what can I get from the marriage, which is such a difficult thing. And it's very humbling to reflect and realize how selfish one can be. And I think I still realize that probably every other day. But there's different things. And, you'll do something as simple as being like, why don't you put the cup in the dishwasher? And I'm only thinking about the task that's left out for me. I'm not thinking about the fact that he probably came home on the phone, barely had a chance to grab something, maybe get a drink of water. He's still on the phone. He's stressed out, probably having a rough day. He left.
And all you see is
all I see is the task that it created for me. And then you have to see it through the lens of like, we're both living our lives, they're commingled, they're occurring in the same house. And if I'm the cohabitant of this house, and every time my other cohabitant comes in, it's negative, I'm complaining, I'm angry about something, I'm only bringing my worst, which, you know, at some points you only have your worst, but without being conscious of that. Exactly. Yeah, we have a few. But without being conscious of that, and they can overrun the good days, and then you're only bringing your worst. And then what environment are you creating for this person that you're supposed to love more than anything? And if I'm the main character in Austin's life, if I'm the main person that he sees besides the inside of his own brain, then I don't want to be somebody who's nagging and you know, very complaining and doom and gloom. And
but what does that do also when he wants to come and relax and be with in a safe space, and that's not home?
Yes, exactly. And the same thing is true on the opposite. Like if I came home and the one person that I see every single day, the one person that I wake up next to and fall asleep next to and want to talk to at every point during the day, if that person is a drain and only negative and not fulfilling me in any way, and of course everything is with a grain of salt, because sometimes your best is 10% or 15% or it's 12%, and you just never really know. But I think that it takes the focus off of me for me, and reminds me that I'm the main person he's going to see and talk to today. So
but that is amazing that you had that self-awareness. Exactly what you just said. You took the focus off of you. If we could learn, it took me way longer than 3 years to learn that, because all I saw in the moment of any, you know, neglected chores or words spoken that weren't perfect or whatever was me, my emotions, my reaction. But when you have that self-awareness of like, hold on, put me aside and see the whole picture, and you just love them anyways and love them through it, it creates that beautiful environment in the home where you have harmony and peace and joy and love. And that's what, you know, that's what we're created for.
Right. And it's so difficult because we want to be right. We means me. I want to be right all the time. And it's difficult sometimes to understand that we both have our reasons and we might both be right. We might both be right for how we handle the situation based on what we're bringing into it. And sometimes it's right back to what you said at the beginning, when you have to time out and say, I'm having a rough day. I'm talking because of my rough day. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just in a bad mood. And it sounds so silly because you almost want to come in rage and, you know, just be in a horrible mood and take it out on whoever's in your path, and then have them be like, oh, what can I do for you? What's wrong? That's not fair, and that's not realistic.
Who's the fixer in your relationship?
It depends on the day. He tends to be the fixer with advice, where I bring a problem in and it's solution. And that's why we also had to learn to communicate, where I don't need a solution. I just want to get it off my chest, or I know the solution. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just want to complain, and I don't want it to be fixed. And sometimes that was a big hurdle to overcome at the beginning, because he wants to, like, you know, slay the dragon, and sometimes the dragon's gonna get slayed anyway. I just need to complain about it, so it's difficult.
I am typically the fixer. If anybody comes to me with a problem, like, solution, here's what you could do, and we've had to learn that there's times, and he's now communicating this, like, hey, I love you, and I know you want to fix it, but I don't need solutions right now. I just need to vent. Exactly what you just said. Realizing that, and instead of just internalizing, like, oh my gosh, why is she always just like interrupting me when I just want to, you know, vent, in communicating that, I'm like, oh, okay, he just wants me to listen.
Oh yeah.
And I respect that, and I just listen.
Exactly.
And everybody's happy.
Yep, it was granted, it was great.
It was granted, it was great. I love it.
So when I first asked you to introduce yourself, you started with mom and wife.
Yeah.
How do you handle both of those roles, which are obviously so pivotal and important in your life? And also your sense of self, your idea of self. How do you kind of separate and also marry those together?
I think for me, it's all one person. Mom, and, you know, being a wife first, obviously, is you're in covenant and you're in relationship, and it's the first thing you build together is the marriage. And then you introduce kids and you start to rebuild the marriage, because marriage changes after kids, and you have to rebuild the marriage to adapt for children. And then depending on the season of your children's lives, you know, from toddlers to, you know, young adults.
Which you won't believe, but Tatyana has adult children. You won't believe it looking at her, but she does.
Yes, we do. And all those seasons are so different. In my early years, it was very hard to balance that. And I found my worth in work. And I would go and I would feel good about myself at work, and then I would come home and then I would just do the tasks that were ready for or waiting for me, which included everything with the kids. As I got older, I started to realize that it's not what I do that my kids will remember, it's who I am. And I started to kind of pivot and be more present. And this was during my season when I was working for the church, where I really was balancing and juggling work and family life. And it was
a lot.
It was a lot. It was maxed. And
I'm sure that can be difficult on your faith life as well, whenever the source of your stress is also coming from your place of worship. And I can't speak for you, but I can imagine that when that's also your place where you're supposed to come for security and sanctuary and recovery. And I know you don't worship in your office, but whenever that's your place, and that you're also taking the same drive as you do on Sunday morning or on Wednesday nights, and I bet that can be a very difficult time.
It was. Spiritually, I think there's a layer that God grants favor over your life when you're called to a season of ministry, where it's just it's a covering. And so I felt that supernatural presence and covering that helped me in all of these like everyday life tasks that I had to do, plus work, plus everything else. But there was one female ministry leader that I really looked to her as a mentor. And I listened to a resource that she recorded, because she's a mom. She had young kids. She was married, and she's leading this church and ministry, and she's doing all these things. And she said, listen, your kid, while you're called to the ministry to do all of these things, your kids are your first calling.
Wow.
And if all they remember is you screaming and yelling at them, get in the car, throw in the juice boxes, let's go to church, to worship, what are they going to remember?
And what are they going to affiliate with church?
And what are they going to affiliate with church? And that was such an aha moment for me. It was a huge reset.
I have chills. I have kids to yell at.
And your kids they won't remember what you did.
Yeah.
They will remember who you are.
Well, there's that quote from Maya Angelou that I know that you probably have written down somewhere, that's people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that's so relevant inside and outside the household.
Absolutely.
But it's incredibly true. And for me, we've talked about before, for years of knowing each other, I've never known what my role as a mom would be, because I have always been career first and very independent. And even coming into a marriage, not wanting to be provided for, because I had a chip on my shoulder and I was very, I can do this, screw you, I can handle it. And it took me years of being safe in our relationship to understand that it's not insulting for someone to want to care for you. It's actually an act of love for most people. But for me, it was such a point of contention, because I didn't want to depend on anyone. And that's something for some therapists to unpack on a billable hour.
About it. When life has done an injustice to you, and when you've gone through hurt and pain, what that hurt and pain does is it warps the good things that you should accept into something bad. And then we fight it.
Right.
And then we fight it. And when you realize, hey, this is actually not a bad thing. This is just how I see it through the lens of my past, or through the lens of my past trauma. And you can self-identify.
Oh, yeah.
Therapists and friends and mentors can help kind of guide you on that. There's a lot of things that we miss out on because we have a lens of hurt over them.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, the Bible says guard your heart. A lot of people want to guard their hurt. And when they guard their hurt, they have that lens of trauma, and they see the good things in life as something warped and twisted, and it keep us from blessing, keep us from freedom.
And that's typical, because when you guard your hurt, you think you're protecting yourself, but you're preventing yourself from getting all these potentially amazing things. And if I hadn't learned to meet Austin halfway, or even meet him 20% of the way, and then slowly take, 1% of a step every year, then I would have been missing out on this amazing relationship where I feel like I can finally take a deep breath after years of thinking that the only way to feel validated, the only way to feel independent and powerful was to do it on my own. You don't realize the breath that you held for so long, and then finally being able to release that and being like, maybe there is someone who wants to help me and doesn't want anything from me. And of course that makes you want to give even more to them, and it's just the symbiotic, like, perpetual cycle of you want to do more for this person that's doing for you, and that's marriage, I guess. And it's also
but it's an upward spiral.
Yes, or so easily downward spiral, because I can see how quickly that would turn if even, the longer you're married, I'm sure the harder life gets, just because the higher the stakes, the more you do work-wise, the more important you are in your job, then the more you can lose, the bigger your problems. And more money, more problems. It just, everything gets to be higher stakes. So it's so much easier.
This is the one thing that I've learned. Everybody should lose everything once.
This is a good story.
Usually the earlier the better, because once you've lost everything, financially speaking, if we can pivot to that, once you've lost everything and you are stripped to your bare minimum and then some, which we went through in 2008. We lost everything financially. We were absolutely ruined. And
you had kids.
We had kids, yeah. And we had one kiddo and one on the way. It's great.
And can you give a little backstory? Because my listener base, some will remember 2008 for the trauma that it was, and some won't.
So the housing market collapse, where all the mortgages were pretty much going into default, so the market crashed and the economy crashed along with it. We were working 10, 12-hour days, but there was just not enough to provide for the bills, for the payments, and for the house that we just bought, like 6 months later, lost half of its value. And what do you do with that?
Yeah. And even now, with everyone obviously still experiencing some financial hardships, home prices are still inflated.
Yep.
I'm sure that if this is the first financial crisis some have experienced, it's detrimental. But
it's terrifying.
For people who've lived through other ones, they're probably thinking this is still a blessing.
This is nothing.
Yeah.
But no, the 2008 financial crisis was something very, very unique, because when you have a recession or a depression in the economic market, usually housing is a strong savior. In those markets. This is one of the very rare times that housing went down with it, or caused it, actually. And that changed trajectory of the housing market permanently. They completely revamped how mortgages were done after that, because they said, this is too risky. We can't let this happen again. So now, being in the mortgage industry and seeing it from that perspective, and being a consumer who lost everything because of this, I kind of have this wholesome picture of, I understand the rules and regulations and all the hoops you have to jump through to get a mortgage, because it was created to be difficult.
Yes.
Because it was so easy. Everybody was getting a mortgage and not able to pay for it.
Yes, and there's no safety net, because whenever they grant them out, and this wasn't taught to me by any institution that I worked in, but I learned it just through my own research, is that they make mortgage loans and car loans the easiest to get, because that's the last thing people want to default on.
And student loans.
Because you're young and impressionable. But mortgage loans, they for a long time made them so easy to get, because they thought that would be the last thing people would ever want to lose is their house.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, how predatory that can be, it's a good thing that it changed. And honestly, not to jump ahead on your story, but wow, how goosebump inducing it is to think that your biggest pitfall with your adult life, if I may, turned into your ministry. And the most difficult thing that you guys went through, and how personal it was to have this loss and this crisis due to the housing market, and then now you're able to work with people in their home buying season and their investment experiences. And there's obviously a divine intervention present there, but it is very powerful, because the perspective that you have isn't just of someone that was never impacted negatively by this.
Well, for me, we jump ahead so quickly, but it was so traumatizing. It took us probably a solid 3 years to decompress from that loss, because when you lose your house, and thankfully we were able to do a short sale, but still, you're losing everything. You feel like such a failure. You feel like you're not human. That you failed at being the one thing everybody else is doing well. Being a decent human who can provide for your family. It was very, very detrimental. It definitely put pressure on our relationship. For me, putting myself first, I was like, this is not the life I signed up for. This shouldn't be so hard. That I deserve more. You go through all those things of what am I still doing here?
Yeah.
And
talking to God, thinking, I've done everything right.
I've done everything right.
I've gone to church. I'm in a loving marriage. I've dedicated myself, and you're just almost rationalizing it with God as though He owes us an explanation. But the anger is so real, and it can take root so easily when you don't understand why you're in that place.
The hurt, I think, I felt from God.
I understand.
Can you do it? Of course. Because it wasn't what I saw was hurt at the time. It was His greatest blessing.
And it can feel like abandonment. Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Sorry, it just took me back to that moment.
No,
That was the conversation I had with God. I did everything right. And you're going through this loss and this pain, and you don't know why.
if you knew what I had been writing in my journal, Tatyana, if you knew what I had just been journaling about, literally for weeks, it's been those exact words. Like, why have you abandoned me? I've been doing everything right. I've been praying. I've been going to church. I've been keeping my head up. I've been doing everything. Why aren't you listening? Why have you abandoned me? Why
Why
all
are you
these things?
silent?
Yes, where have you been? And it's abandonment. It's anger. It's why have you forsaken me? And I kept going back to this Bible verse, God, please take this cross from me. I don't want to do this, but if this is your way, then this is your way and I'll do it. But I don't want to. And almost like begrudgingly following God's will because one, because you have no choice.
Yeah.
But because that's what Jesus did.
But that season for me was 3 years. That season of what are we doing? Why are we here? That was 3 years. And so sitting here now on the other side of it, yes, we get to do so many incredible things now, but I understand now that season of being broken was the greatest blessing. The greatest blessing. And now we've overcome it, financially, we've overcome it relationship wise. We look back at that time as one of our greatest lessons where God stripped us of everything. And he said, we're going to start over. And we're going to go ahead and strip you of your past. We're going to strip you of your shortcomings. We're going to strip you of your trauma. We're going to strip you of everything. And we're going to start over. And when we started over an amazing church. We started over with great mentors. We started over in a new geographical area. We really started over. And humbly just put our nose to the ground and we worked our tails off. We worked. And that's in the season that I started working at the church. And it was very healing for me to be that close to ministry after going through almost 3 years of just, why has God left me? Why has he forsaken me? And he's not left you. He's not forsaken you. You'll look back on this season and it's like that picture of the 2 sets of footprints. And there's 1 set of footprints.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry again. That was that was her saving grace when she had cancer. Every single day we would look at that, we would read Jesus Calling, read your devotional, and then we would look at this footprints in the sand. And for those of you who don't know, it's an image and it's 2 sets of footprints and then it's 1 set of footprints. And it's a person looking back on their life and saying, God, every single time I was going through my hardest time, there's only 1 set of footprints. Why did you leave me whenever I was going through my hardest time? And God says, I didn't leave you, I was carrying you. Yeah. And every time I read it, no matter how many times, I start bawling because it's so powerful and so true. And sometimes even now for me, our trials might be different, but it's the exact same sentiment, thinking you've been abandoned, thinking, where are you? What are you doing? And it's only when you look back, and even looking back on my mom having cancer, our whole family can reflect on how much stronger that made our faith and how it turned our faith from a habit into a crutch, into something that we rely on. And before that, it was just something to check off on your schedule. And all of our lives are better for that, and they will be indefinitely, and so will the lives of the people we marry, the kids that we have, and everyone that we interact with, because she had cancer. And I've been more empathetic. I've been involved in nonprofits because of the empathy that I have for all of those going through cancer. Just now it makes sense, but then it didn't. And I've been telling myself, so long, it will make sense one day. And then you still have that human guilt and shame where I see God. I know that he will do something good in my life. And I know there's a good story. And I know that, my testimony can impact people, but then I still have this part of me that says, I don't want a testimony. I want my prayer answered. I want my prayer answered. I want the pain taken away.
Well, here to that point, I want my prayer answered. This is a lesson that I learned just a couple of years ago because we were going through a different season, a different trial, as one does, they continue. And I was deeply praying for something very specific, exactly what I'm doing everything right, and I'm praying and I'm believing God's going to answer my prayer. And it went opposite of what I was praying for. Yeah. And I was so angry at God again. I was like, what's happening?
I asked for it in Jesus' name. I gave you a prayer petition. I don't know what I was supposed to do.
I mean, I fasted, I prayed, I knew he's calling me to this. Yes. And so it was almost like me aligning with the purpose I knew he's already given me. And then it went sideways. And in having those angry conversations with God, as one does, he really spoke to me and he said, I called you to pray, not to tell me how to answer your prayer. Ooh. And girl,
the number of goosebumps you've given me during this recording.
Looking back at how it all pivoted and that unanswered prayer blessed us 10 times more in the best case scenario. And this is just the last couple of years. I look back on it and I'm thinking, thank you, Jesus, for not answering my prayer the way that I was praying it. You had so much more. You had so much more for me. Wow. And it's, I guess with time, you see more and more of those lessons compounded, and you can glean from your past to understand that in those seasons of silence, God's orchestrating a whole new world for you. In your season of silence that you don't hear him, he's out there changing the world on your behalf that you can have better than what you're asking. And that's what I've learned just recently is our job is to pray. And if it doesn't go exactly the way that we're praying, it doesn't matter what it is, relationships, finance, career, kids, whatever it is that your heart's longing for and you feel God has put it there. That's why you have the longing. You have to partner in faith and say, God, I know you'll answer it better than I can. You'll answer it better than I can. And he will.
And what greater act of faith is there than letting go of it and giving it to God and saying, your timing is better than my timing.
And that is faith.
You didn't know you were going to say the word today. That was so good today. It's so good. You always do this. You always speak directly to my soul. That was genuinely, I think that was orchestrated by God. I needed to hear that so badly today. And I will listen to this just along with everybody else because that was so, so beautiful and so well said. And I can't thank you enough for your wisdom, for one, and just your vulnerability and being able to share your lowest points. I think it takes a lot of grace, a lot of humility to do that, even after you've gone through it and come out, a champion on the other side. But I think it still takes a lot of strength to admit, what your lowest points look like, and a lot of people will benefit from that. But not to, skip ahead, but to be courteous of your time. Obviously, that struggle has yielded you some major strengths in life, but also in your career. So tell us a little bit about what you do now, what you like about it, what drew you to this field.
Yeah. So, mortgage loan originator, I help people finance homes. And really, if I had to break it down, I help people use real estate to build wealth. That is my goal. Losing everything in real estate and starting over. And then for the last 16 years, well, for the last 7 really, we have, one, the courage to step out and start our own business as well. And 2, use real estate to help us achieve wealth. The banking and mortgage side gave me a lot of tools that I didn't know. How do you leverage debt that's not as risky or can yield, greater results? And then how do you duplicate that over and over again without really burdening yourself financially? So that's on the mortgage side. I help people leverage real estate to build wealth from your first home to your second, third, fourth, et cetera, build out your portfolio. And our real estate, business, we build and develop real estate. So it come full circle, I think, for me, knowing that real estate is a difficult thing to grasp. And there's so many, fast facts about, the TikToks of the world. But at the end of the day, you have to understand your relationship with money. How do you view money? How do you use money?
Yes.
What do you understand that it's a tool and not just something to spend?
You should use money. Money should not use you.
Yep.
Very, very easily confused.
Very much. And what is good debt? What is bad debt?
Yes.
There's a difference.
I grew up middle class, Midwestern, Dave Ramsey-esque family, and you just grew up. Debt is bad. You pay off your debt. That's a happy life. And I never learned scalable income. I never learned entrepreneurship. I never learned, and that's to no fault of my parents. That's just by and large the viewpoint, especially in that time and the way that they were raised. It's a lot of, you pay off your house, you pay off your cars, you put money in savings. You don't learn that there's good debt, there's income producing debt, there's investments, there's things that can yield you a far greater return than, the interest rate that you're paying. And
well, the one thing that, the saying that kind of struck me is debt that makes you money is not debt.
And people hear the D word and they just sometimes get gun shy and they think that it's dead as bad.
Well, even Dave Ramsey method. You know, people are like, oh, Dave Ramsey doesn't want you to have debt and, you know, you can't buy anything.
It's just the phase one.
That's phase one.
Yeah.
Phase two is you pay off your debt so you can take your money and invest it in other income producing aspects that you can set your family up for. But my personal kind of like beacon has been generational wealth. How do I build generational wealth? And then how do I help people achieve generational wealth?
Yes.
In the day-to-day, that shows up in mortgage. I help clients secure financing to obtain real estate.
Right.
In our business, that is now pivoting to development of subdivisions so you can create the next stream of inventory for people to, for builders to have lots to build on, for realtors to have houses to sell, for people to have houses to buy, you know, for you know, home insurance companies to have policies to write. It's just this greater, bigger thing than myself that I get to contribute to our local community, to our local, you know, economy. And it was a scary thing, like going from, oh, we build a couple houses a year to, oh, we're going to do a full-blown subdivision.
Yeah.
That was a 5-year span. And it was scary, but when you have purpose in your calling, and that I felt God called us to it. God has called us to it, and he said, I will help you. And you sometimes have to step back and you have to trust him through the hard days. You have to trust him through the great days and give him credit where credit is due, because it's all up to his, like, only by his grace and for his glory that we get to do what we do.
Absolutely. And I've told this story a million times. I don't want to bore my listeners, but even the story of how I came to be self-employed, I thought was a failure. I thought it was my mistake because I had taken a leap of faith to take a job that I thought was perfect, that I was like, I can do my own business on the side. I can do this business part-time. It's going to be so amazing. God gave me this gift.
Yeah.
This is a blessing. Only to find out that I hadn't asked the right questions. I had a 7-page non-compete that was given to me 3 days into my new job that I didn't anticipate. I couldn't take my old job back. And I sat there thinking, I am the dumbest person alive. I didn't know what I was doing. I was thinking, this wasn't from God, actually. He wouldn't have given me this, only to pull it out from under me. And it went on, and I just remember being so down on myself and feeling like I made this humiliating mistake. I'm going to have to go beg for my job back or find something new. And this wasn't God. Only to find out that if I hadn't had the rug pulled out from under me, I never would have started to run. I never would have gone out on my own because I wouldn't have had the courage. So God knew exactly what he was doing and giving me this sinking ship almost so that I would have to learn to swim. I would have never done it on my own. And only in retrospect can I look back and see that was exactly how it had to happen. Otherwise, I would have stayed in my comfortable salary job thinking that I had it made, not even knowing what was in store. And the irony is that I can look at that story and I can say, what do you think I can apply that to now?
But think about it. All great things come on the cusp of some tragedies or crisis. I've adapted kind of a new saying: never waste a good crisis. Never waste a good crisis. There is always something. There is something that you can learn and glean from, pivot. You know, hey, the ship is sinking. Hey, I could
Or a blessing or a lesson. Everything's sometimes both.
Well, fail forward, fail fast, and just push through it, because yes, you sat there and said, I made a huge mistake. I felt like a failure. What do I do now? But it was exactly the crisis that spurred you to take the next few steps, because you had no other option. You had to go and move forward and succeed. And that is a lot of times you just look back at, hey, what are the great shifts in our lives? They're right after a horrible season or a failure or a tragedy. And God just reconstructs us, takes the broken pieces, reconstructs us, and gives us a different opportunity to grow and become something more and greater than what we were before.
And sometimes I look back, and I'm sure it's the same for many people that have gone through all of their different versions of this, but I look back and think, how on earth did I do that? Because if I had to go through that again, I think I would have been terrified. I would have been too nervous to cold call. My imposter syndrome would have eaten me alive. And to look back on those early days and to think that I somehow just woke up, no job, hardly any clients, and just had no idea what I was doing, no one to compare it to, and just did it. I know those were the seasons that God carried me. And even to think about other low points in my life whenever I just didn't know how did I get up every day. If you put me back in that spot, you know, if I woke up and realized that everything had been a dream and I'm right back there, I don't know how I would do it over again. Those are the points that I can look at and say, God was carrying me. At the time, I didn't know it, but wow.
Yeah.
Anyways, again, to be respectful of your time, we gotta move on. But wow, you just have such a good word for everyone today. We've talked about your faith and your journey just to get to where you are. We've talked about your marriage. I would love to do even a whole other episode with you talking about financial tips because I don't want to take time away from your story. But I've been trying to convince Tatyana for years that she needs to just be a life coach and quit everything else. But obviously, she's got college. Her calling's being her God. But I've learned so much from you as far as financial advice. And the thing that I really admire and appreciate about you is that you don't have the same. You have the same structure, but it's not the same rinse and repeat approach for every single person. And you understand it's not always realistic to go out and immediately have an investment portfolio. It's everything from credit counseling if you have poor credit and debt. It's talking about paying off debt. And you've never looked down your nose at anyone for not being in the position to buy $1 million house. You never turn someone away from a conversation. You always meet someone where they are. You'll talk to them and say, what's your goal? Here's how I would help you get there. And there's nothing in it for you. You earn money when you sell a house, whenever you sell a lot, when you do a mortgage. You will talk to anyone outside of that circumstance for hours. And I love that about you. I think that it's so admirable. And even in asking you what you do for a living, you don't say, I make loans. You say, I help people. I help people get into their houses. I help families find homes. And you could have easily just said, I do paperwork, I do loans. And honestly, you could transition to a different kind of living if you wanted to and probably have less stress and less moving pieces and make more money. But you have such a gift and such a calling, and I think that the success that you've had is so well deserved. And I hope that you see infinite success, and I think that you will. But I just have not enough time to say all the good things that I want to say about you. So my questions for you would be, again, I have to start with another compliment. In your corporate life, you're obviously beautiful, poised, and you don't shy away from being feminine in your presentation, which I think is difficult. And one of the things that I struggled with as a new entrepreneur is thinking that I had to present more masculine or emulate the men that I had worked for previously in order to be taken seriously. So in my dress, in my tone, in the way that I carried myself, I was trying very hard to be, buttoned up, almost too stiff, and not lean into any of my own personal touches. Only to years later find out that people wanted to talk to me. Yep. Shocker, not because I'm a white collar businessman, but because of who I am. Yeah. So how have you found balance between being yourself, being feminine, and also being powerful in a workplace setting? And then you can lead into any tips you have for.
That's a great question. I think the easiest and simplest answers are sometimes the ones that are the hardest to comprehend. Mm-hmm. But it really was at the advice of my husband, and he said, just be yourself. Yeah. I'm like, what else you got? Preparing for this interview with this, big bank. I'm terrified. He said, just be yourself. Right. Just be yourself. And that he's given me that advice for years and years and years. And leaning into that, exactly what you just said. You were uniquely created and designed to be you. And we have, obviously, you mentioned imposter syndrome. That imposter syndrome steals away from who you are it makes you believe that you should be something else. Yes. Who you are, number one, is enough. That was a lesson I had to learn. Who you are is enough. Mm-hmm. And if you're improving and working on you, and then you just show up as yourself every day, you don't have to emulate or copy or present or just be you. And I think that, for me, being myself, my true authentic self, is a powerful thing because most people are afraid to be themselves. Yes. They have I have to present this way or I have to be a certain way. But I think that's also why I can talk to anybody about anything hey, finance is great, relationships great. I'm just who I am and I'm going to help how I can. Mm-hmm. And that's how I present to, into my career, corporate life, I guess.
But I've seen you transcend, all these different situations, going from speaking in a room full of hundreds of people on a panel. I've seen you talk to people that are younger, more inexperienced, that have no money. I've seen you talk to politicians and very powerful individuals in the community. I've seen you talk to everyone, and you're the exact same person. You don't put on a front. You genuinely are. You're just Tatyana, and that's an incredible gift to be able to just walk from room to room, so sure of who you are that you're not wavering. And of course, sometimes we stand up a little straighter and we smile a little bit nicer, but you are who you are. And I have learned so much just from observing you be you.
Well, it's scary to be yourself.
Mm-hmm. Because if people don't like you, they don't like you. It's not they don't like the front that you have. They don't like you.
It's being vulnerable and presenting yourself authentically who you are. Mm-hmm. But people not everybody's going to like me and not everybody's going to want to work with me. it still hurts.
Yeah.
But when you understand that that's just the world.
Yeah.
And there's still enough business for everybody to be happy.
Yes.
And I'm not going to compromise on being myself to win the deal.
Yes. Wow.
I'm not.
That's been a hard lesson for me, and I don't know that I can fully say that I've learned it, but I'm working on it.
But here's what I've also kind of, my mindset on overcoming that.
Yeah.
Not everybody is blessed enough to work with you. And sometimes God's protecting you from those people. Or sometimes he's protecting them from the blessing because they're not deserving of that right now.
Yeah.
And when you look at it through that context, you're still being who you are, the best authentic version of who God created you to be. And then the people who don't like you, or the people who don't want to work with you, or the people who, they steal, lie, cheat, all the other negative things that we can.
The list goes on.
The list goes on. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. And it's very challenging, especially for anyone who finds himself in a role where their career intersects with their person.
Yeah.
And both of us represent ourselves and our business.
Yeah.
And to feel a rejection in a professional setting can feel very, very personal because I am my business. So if someone doesn't want to work with me or doesn't want to continue working with me or chooses to work with someone else over me, it's very difficult to separate your worth and your identity from that loss. But when you focus back on where your worth comes from, and it's not me. It could be any number of factors, but it's not me.
But think about it. If the earlier comment I made, you are not what you do. Your worth and value is not in what you do, it's who you are. And you showed up and you were yourself, authentic, and somebody said, I don't want to do that. You've done what you're called to do. And that's all you're called to do.
Yeah.
So when you keep following that pattern, you'll find that your list of clients, your referral partners will be more refined and more to your personality.
Which has been the biggest lesson. The biggest blessing.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You all of a sudden look around and you're like, wow, how am I surrounded by all these amazing people? It's because you kept being authentic and true to yourself, and you presented who God created you to be over and over and over again. You didn't sacrifice or compromise that for a deal or a client or a contract.
At least not anymore.
But for me, that's been a big kind of challenge and hurdle is be yourself. Just be yourself.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for people who are more career focused that are seeking to advance in the corporate world? It's 99% women, so we can say girls that are like
honestly, don't wait for permission. Show up every day as the best version of yourself. I don't care if you're the janitor or a teller or an analyst. Show up and be the best version of yourself. And if you're sitting there and waiting to be noticed, be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's
what people always notice.
People always notice.
You just might not find out for years.
Years
But look at us. I wanted to work with you since I first met you. I just had no idea in what capacity that would ever be. I never wanted to be self-employed. I never thought social media was a career path. But I wanted to work with you and be in your airspace since I met you. And fast forward, it was probably 5 years before I even got the chance. So,
but how fun is it to work in this capacity together than it is like doing loan stuff?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is so much better.
So much better, yes.
So much better. But I think for years and years and years, I was waiting for permission that, hey, somebody would come and say, okay, we're going to give you a chance at this promotion, or we're going to want you to do this. And when I kind of put that aside and I just said, I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to invest in me.
Yes.
I'm going to take the time and read the resources. I'm going to listen to podcasts. I'm going to educate myself, and then I'm going to bring that to the workplace. That is what catapulted my career into, I have imposter syndrome and I'm not good enough and I don't have, all these degrees or certifications. But I just showed up and I learned. I showed up and I learned. I showed up and I learned day in, day out, day in, year after year, year after year. And now to be where I am today, I still, like I said, look back on it only by the grace of God. But if I had to give any advice of, if you want to grow in your career, if you want to grow in the corporate or self-employed division, be the best version of yourself. Invest in yourself. Invest in your transferable skills.
Yes.
Most of the resources that I went and sought had nothing to do with mortgage. It was about emotional intelligence.
Yes. I was just going to say, one of the biggest lessons I think I've learned from you is just the way you communicate with people. There's so much eye contact. You make everyone feel important. You make everyone feel listened to. And it's very rare in a setting where everyone wants better for themselves. Everybody wants to climb. That you're not someone who's doing one of these. You know, you're not looking for the next most important person to talk to. No matter who you're speaking to, you always make them feel so important. And I've been the lowest person that you could have talked to. And I mean, not that I have the world to offer you now, but I've been that person where
I'm on your podcast now. Let's not shy away from the things you've accomplished.
But truly, I have that perspective because I was seriously somebody who you had no reason to even know my name, and you were so kind, and you treat everyone with the utmost respect, like you're speaking to the president of the bank, and it just I could truly say that because I witnessed it, but I admire that so much, and I know that a lot of my listeners too are stay-at-home moms, so I want to give them some advice as well. And you've already given so many amazing tips on just being a present mom and an emotionally accessible mom. Do you have any tips for women who are maybe in the throes of motherhood and just looking for some encouragement?
If you're a stay-at-home mom and you've got littles or you know, elementary school age kids, that is your calling. That is your purpose, to be with those children right now. Even the Bible gives leniency to like moms with babies. You are not expected to be at every event, be polished, stay up to date on all the, you know, political happenings. I mean, you could, but don't put any other layers or personalities of what you should be, what you need to be doing. Wow. You being with those kids, that is you fulfilling the utmost calling. You are creating the next generation. And we talk about generational wealth. How about generationally healthy children?
Wow.
How about generationally strong relationships? Like, that is what you're doing right now with your kids. Like, it is the hardest job. The hardest job is being a stay-at-home mom. And I did it.
Someone who worked in mortgage during COVID, someone who has survived all of these different things in her job.
Stay-at-home mom, it is you're doing the hardest work with very little accolades.
Yes.
But those accolades show up when your teenage kids look at you like, wow, you taught us this, and wow, we got to grow up in this. And
when they keep calling you into their 20s and when they want to have that relationship with you, it will pay off. And I can say that as someone who calls my mom every single day. So the parenting it's so underrated. So I can't think of a good word that's not going to just not do justice.
It's underappreciated.
Yeah.
Nobody comes and gives you a bonus because the kids.
Sometimes it's even shame because people look down their nose at moms who stay at home because they're not bringing home a monetary contribution, and that just reduces their role to something that's so insulting. And I love that you said that because I gave you no prompts, but that's one of the biggest things that I see from my friends that are either on maternity leave or they're staying at home more permanently is that I feel behind. They don't do their makeup. Maybe they're not in the gym. They can't make it to the social events. They just aren't on top of things like they used to be or they should be. And that's and the fact that that's exactly what you spoke to, I think, is very helpful. Very beautiful.
I mean, it's a blessing to have these stay-at-home parents who can rear the next generation because we're only as good as what we leave in the world.
Yes.
Like 100 years doesn't seem like that long.
Yeah.
And nobody will remember us in 100 years.
Yeah. And there's some peace in that, and there's some terrifying. It's liberating for me, actually. But I do want to say how encouraging it is to see you because you've taken every season, and it might not seem like this from the inside, but from talking to you and learning so much about your life, it sounds like every season you've not rushed through. You've been at home with little kids. You've been working in the church. You've been in all of these different stages, and you've never just been like, I gotta get to the next one. And it's so difficult because I do that criminally. So to hear you say, there's time for everything, and then to look at you now on top of your game, driving a Maserati, you're just running things. You're so amazing. Like your marriage is beautiful. Your kids are beautiful. Your kids are successful. Everything has worked out for you. And to see that all come together, your life doesn't end whenever you have kids. Your life doesn't end whenever you lose everything. Your life doesn't end when you change jobs. And just, I admire you more than I can say. If I haven't said that enough,
you have. You're so sweet.
Let's do a rapid fire report, and then I'll send you on your way.
All right.
What are you reading, or what would you recommend that people read?
I am reading right now The Millionaire Next Door. And it's a series of books that I would highly recommend for anybody who wants to learn finance.
Absolutely.
It has a lot of insight on relationship and how we perceive money.
I love that. I will write that down. What are you eating? What's your favorite food these days?
I think coffee, hands down, is my favorite food always.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Cheers to coffee.
Always. What your coffee order? Always.
Soy latte, 1 pop vanilla.
That's easy. I'm trying to cut back on my sugar because it's all I eat. So this is just a plain oat milk latte. It's very sad, but it's still delicious. Coffee is coffee. What are you playing? It can be music, podcasts, or sports.
Podcast. I'm an avid Buffini podcaster. It is really blessed me because it has a sense of real estate and economics and finance and policy, but it's more so on personal development, who you are, and overcoming things that, challenges that life throws at you all the time.
I love that. Absolutely. What are you obsessing over? Anything?
Surprise. I am obsessing over a couple of projects that are near and dear to my heart because I feel like it's every day's a joy. Every day I get to go out there and be a part of it. It's a joy. So
I love that. I love that so much. And that's very true. What are you recommending?
Take it easy. Wow. Be yourself. Wow. There's no race you're going to win by overexerting and burning yourself out. Because that price ain't worth it.
No. Well, there's all these quotes. The turtle and the tortoise and the hare. There's the marathon, not a sprint. Everything is so true, and it's so almost overly said to the point that we lose the effect. But it's so true. And
the one statement I've kind of coined in our household is live life like you're on vacation. Not in the sense that you just abandon all your responsibilities, but approach each day like you're on vacation. There's work, but you know what? I can go sit in my back porch and enjoy the sunset, or I can go on a walk, or I can sit by the pool at the end of the day. Do those things during your life.
That's been so pivotal for me. That sentiment, because there are 3 quotes that are like fighting for me to say them all at once. But one of them is that how you spend your days is how you spent your life. So if you spend your whole life not sitting on the back porch, not looking at the sunsets, not enjoying your day, if you spend your whole life just getting through the day, that was your life. That's awful. And then also just
working to pay the bills.
Yes, just living for the weekend, all of those things. And sometimes that's people's reality, but there's small things that you can enjoy that are not necessarily luxuries that still enhance your life, but also just not waiting until your to-do list is done to enjoy life. Because that's a big thing for me, is waiting until I have everything crossed off, until the house is clean, until everything is done, and then giving myself permission to enjoy life, because the to-do list is actually never crossed off. So
it's never crossed
I will be waiting a very long time. Finally, what are you treating yourself to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think travel. Travel's our treat. We have a trip planned to Europe here in the fall, so travel's definitely our treat to ourselves, and we like to travel, but we also like to come home, because I really have embraced that sentiment of live like you're on vacation, and I like my life. I enjoy my life.
What a blessing.
I don't want to run away from my life and go do something else. So.
I think that's the biggest thing that I thank God for, is that, and not as much as I should, when I'm on vacation, I look forward to coming home. Even if I'm with Austin, even if he's on vacation with me, we love coming home. I can't speak for him. My job is to leave business. But I love coming home because I love my life, and I love my community and my people, and I love that I don't get the Sunday scaries, because I love my job. I love everything about it. So even on the hard days, I love it, and that's something I need to be more thankful for. So
that's beautiful.
Do you have any last minute statements? I will tag all of your socials. I'll plug you soon. So any last minute things you want to say?
Thank you, first of all, for having me on. It's a huge honor of mine, and watching you grow and just transform yourself these past couple of years has been an honor and a joy personally. So thank you for allowing me into your life and sitting at the front row to watch your success. And I know God has some great things for you, and I can't wait to see what will happen. But for everybody else, enjoy life. Take it easy, and don't be too hard on yourself.
And if you and if you need a mortgage, you know who to call.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I love you. And thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week. Bye.